Some of the wealthiest people alive could walk into any boutique on Earth and spend more on a single watch than most people earn in a decade. And they choose not to. Instead, they strap on a piece of plastic that costs less than a takeaway meal, and that choice is not an accident. By the end of this video, you will know exactly who these people are, why they keep reaching for a Casio, and what that says about the gap between appearing wealthy and actually being it. Hand someone $10 billion and ask them what watch they would buy. Almost everyone lands on Rolex, maybe a Patek Philippe, perhaps a Richard Mille, but the instinct is always towards something that signals the money just made. Luxury watches have built their entire business on that instinct, and for most wealthy people, the logic holds completely. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men alive, wears a yellow gold Rolex Day-Date. Jeff Bezos has been spotted wearing a Ulysse Nardin Dual Time. Mark Zuckerberg reportedly owns a Greubel 4C valued at around $900,000. These are men with no reason to hide what they have, and their wrists reflect that openly. So the idea that certain billionaires quietly prefer a $20 Casio sounds like the kind of story the internet manufactures to make rich people seem relatable. And yet, it is not a story the internet manufactured. A specific group of ultra-wealthy and genuinely powerful people have chosen Casio, repeatedly and deliberately. And once you understand why, it changes how you think about money, status, and what wealth actually looks like up close. Casio never tried to be a luxury brand, and understanding that starts with where the company came from. April 1946, Mitaka, Tokyo. A man named Tadao Casio opened a small machine parts workshop called Casio Seisakujo. The product that funded everything that followed was not a watch or a calculator. It was a finger ring cigarette holder that let smokers use a cigarette all the way down without burning their fingers. And the profits from that device seeded what would become one of the most widely owned electronics companies on Earth. June 1957, the Casio brothers officially incorporated Casio Computer Co., Limited, releasing the Model 14A the same year, billed as the world's first compact all-electric calculator, priced at the equivalent of a small car. The name Casio came from anglicizing the family name Casio, chosen deliberately to travel across international markets. From calculators forward, the company's philosophy never shifted. Accurate, affordable, available to everyone. Their first watch, the Casiotron, arrived in 1974 as the world's first digital watch with an automatic calendar function at a fraction of what Swiss brands charged for comparable accuracy. But the watch that put Casio on the map came 9 years later, and the story behind it deserves its own moment. A Casio engineer named Kikuo Ibe dropped his father's mechanical watch on the way to work one morning and watched it shatter on impact. That moment stayed with him, and over the next 2 years he assembled a 3-person team inside Casio and set what he called the Triple 10 goal: survive a drop from 10 meters, resist water to 10 bar pressure, which is 100 meters deep, and run on a single battery for 10 years. More than 200 prototypes got thrown, dropped, and in Ibe's own telling, hurled out of a third-floor bathroom window during testing. The breakthrough arrived when Ibe watched a rubber ball bounce in a park and realized that floating the internal module inside the casing rather than fixing it would let the watch absorb shock without cracking. The G-Shock DW5000C launched in April 1983. Sales were slow at first, since the market in the early 1980s wanted thin, elegant dress watches, not a chunky rubber block. Exposure on American television and a widely shared advertisement showing an ice hockey player using a G-Shock as a puck shifted things fast. Demand exploded in the United States and spread from there. September 2017, Casio shipped its 100 millionth G-Shock. By the 40th anniversary in 2023, that number had cleared 140 million units across more than 140 countries. Patek Philippe, one of the most respected names in Swiss watchmaking, produces roughly 72,000 watches per year. If Patek had started the same year as G-Shock and held that pace every year since, total production would sit at around 2.5 million. G-Shock alone has shipped 140 million. Then there is the F91W June 1989, designed by a Casio engineer named Ryusuke Moriai. As his first project for the company, it launched with a resin case, a digital display, a 7-year battery, and a retail price somewhere between $17 and $23. Production is estimated at around 3 million units per year, and as of 2026, total output is believed to have passed 100 million, placing it among the best-selling watches in history. Casio does not publish per-model figures, so that number is an estimate, but the scale behind it is not seriously questioned. For the fiscal year ending March 2025, Casio's consolidated net sales landed at 261.7 billion yen, with the watch division carrying the company as its largest and most profitable segment. G-Shock accounts for roughly 44 to 49% of timepiece unit sales in recent quarters, and the total Swiss watch export market for 2024 reached 26 billion Swiss francs, per the Federation of the Swiss Watch Industry. Rolex alone holds around 30% of that figure. Switzerland wins on value, and Casio wins on volume by a distance that is genuinely hard to visualize. If you're enjoying the video, please hit that subscribe button. September 2014, Bill Gates appeared at a Politico event called Lessons from Leaders, and someone asked about the watch on his wrist. His answer was that it cost about $10. Gates has turned up in photographs wearing several different Casio models across the years, most notably the Casio Duro MDV 106, a clean analog diver that retails for around $50 to $70, and the MRW 200 Hour, which sells for around $25. Multiple models in rotation tells you something specific about how he thinks about watches. He is not building a collection or making a statement. He buys cheap, practical ones because that is what he prefers and leaves it at that. Chuck Feeney is the name most people skip over, and they should not. Feeney co-founded Duty Free Shoppers, the retail chain that built a fortune selling luxury goods to international travelers, and by the time he finished building the business, he was worth around $8 billion. What came next was unusual. He gave almost all of it away through his foundation, Atlantic Philanthropies, funding universities, hospitals, and peace processes across multiple countries. Both Bill Gates and Warren Buffett credit him as an influence on their own commitments to philanthropy. Feeney died in 2023. Biographer Conor O'Clery met Feeney for the first time in 2005 and published the account in the Irish Times in January 2017. When O'Clery asked about the rumored cheap watch, Feeney confirmed it without drama, putting it simply, "Why do I need a Rolex when it tells the same time?" He mentioned having a spare, offered to sell it to O'Clery for $10, and when O'Clery joked he could not afford it, Feeney handed it over for nothing. Watch media has identified the model as the F91W, though the primary source only ever called it a $10 Casio. Security played a real role in Feeney's choice, not as a symbol but as a practical concern. Through the 1970s and 80s, kidnapping of wealthy business people and their families carried genuine risk in parts of Europe, and a visible luxury watch identifies its wearer as a target immediately. Feeney had also kept his philanthropy secret for years, moving through the world as someone who drew no particular attention, and the Casio fitted that approach entirely. Pope Francis wore a Casio MQ-24, and in December 2020, a Casio representative confirmed it directly to Religion Unplugged, stating that the model is one of their basic lineup, loved by people all over the world. The MQ-24 retails for between $8 and $20, and Casio confirmed it was not a gift from them. He bought it, or someone bought it for him, and he wore it because it worked. Barack Obama was photographed wearing a Casio F91W before his presidency. Former FBI Director Robert Mueller was spotted in a Casio DW290, reportedly worn face inward on his wrist. Chung Eui-sun, heir to the Hyundai empire, has been photographed wearing an F91W with a business suit. Former Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev has reportedly worn a G-Shock GA110. None of these people needed a Casio. Each of them had one, and each time there was a reason that had nothing to do with not being able to afford something better. Stealth wealth became a mainstream term in 2023, pushed along by HBO's Succession, Gwyneth Paltrow's understated courtroom wardrobe during her Utah ski trial in March 2023, and a wave of social media interest in what got called quiet luxury. The idea behind all of it is that the genuinely wealthy avoid visible status signals, choosing expensive but unreadable clothing, plain jewelry, and in some cases a $20 watch on their wrist. Academic research had been mapping this territory for over a decade before it went mainstream. In 2010, researchers Hahn, Nunez, and Drees published a paper in the Journal of Marketing called Signaling Status with Luxury Goods: The Role of Brand Prominence. Their finding was specific. Wealthy consumers low in their need for status want to associate with their own kind and will pay a premium for quiet goods that only people like them can recognize. The signal, in other words, is designed to be invisible to most people and completely legible to the few who matter. A Casio in that context does something no Rolex can. When someone worth $10 billion wears a $20 plastic watch, the people who know who that person is and what they built do not need a gold case to confirm their credibility. The watch stops being a signal of wealth and becomes a signal of something rarer, which is complete indifference to being perceived as wealthy at all. Practicality carries more weight than people give it. A quartz movement in a resin case keeps accurate time, runs for 7 years on a battery, needs no servicing, attracts no thieves, and requires no insurance rider. For someone whose schedule moves across dozens of countries with close protection teams and security briefings, a watch that demands special handling is a genuine inconvenience. A Casio is not the compromise option. For certain lives, it is the rational one. Personal finance research has found something similar in ordinary households. A long-running study of high-net-worth families in the United States found that a large portion of genuinely wealthy people live far below what their net worth would suggest. Ordinary cars, modest neighborhoods, plain watches. The conspicuous consumption most people associate with wealth turns out to be far more common among people who want to appear wealthy than among people who actually are. The Casio sits right at the center of that gap. No account of the F91W is complete without the part that makes people uncomfortable. Leaked documents from Guantanamo Bay, published by outlets including The Guardian and the New York Times in April 2011, describe the watch as a factor in detainee assessments, with training materials suggesting that owning an F91W could indicate bomb-making knowledge. Around 32 detainees were documented wearing the model, with another 20 wearing the metal sibling, the A159W. The criminal record behind that reputation is real. Ramzi Youssef used a Casio timer in the 1994 bombing of Philippine Airlines Flight 434. Ahmed Rassam, arrested in December 1990, carried materials that included a Casio timing device, earning him the name the Millennium Bomber. Osama bin Laden was photographed wearing an F91W. But here is the thing. The reason the watch appeared in those contexts is identical to the reason Feeney wore one and Gates wore one. Cheap, reliable, available in almost every country on Earth, and invisible in a crowd. A Casio in a terrorist kit is the same object sold to a schoolchild in Lagos and a factory worker in Osaka. Experts have consistently pointed out that the connection is circumstantial rather than causal, and detainees themselves noted that American soldiers on the same bases wore the identical watch. The F91DO operates like the Toyota Hilux or the AK-47. It turns up everywhere because it works everywhere and costs almost nothing. Universal utility does not care who is wearing it. The title of this video carries an implication worth addressing directly. Stockpiled suggests billionaires are warehousing Casios as financial assets, the way certain investors hold sealed vintage Rolex sports models waiting for prices to climb. That is not what is happening, and regular Casios do not appreciate in value. Designed to be affordable and replaceable, a used F91W is worth less than a new one. Collector forums are consistent on this point. These watches are bought to use. A narrow exception exists and is worth knowing. Vintage and limited edition G-Shocks, particularly the original 1983 DW 5000C and certain early Frogman and Master of G references in complete condition with original packaging, do carry premiums in the collector market. A small run of 35 solid gold limited edition G-Shocks released in 2018 retailed at around $70,000 each. And in December 2023 at the Phillips New York watch auction, a 1-of-1 18-karat gold G-Shock with an AI-designed dial sold for $315,000 or $400,050 with buyer's premium, confirmed as the auction record for any Casio watch, with proceeds going to the Nature Conservancy, so Casio can reach auction record territory when the conditions are right. What it cannot do is offer the same investment story as steel Rolex sports models or vintage Patek references, both of which have outpaced many financial assets over time. The $20 F91W sitting on a pharmacy peg will not appreciate. The reason billionaires reach for it has nothing to do with future value and everything to do with the fact that a watch costing $20 that tells accurate time is, for someone who has already solved every financial problem they will ever face, genuinely the most rational option on the table. 2023 brought G-Shock's 40th anniversary, and Casio leaned into it with premium metal models, a wave of limited collaborations, and a retro revival driven largely by younger buyers who had no memory of these designs the first time around. The GA2100, nicknamed the Casio in collector circles for its visual resemblance to the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, has posted consistently strong numbers as a result. October 2024, A ransomware attack disrupted Casio's operations and hurt year-end figures, contributing to the 2.6% revenue decline reported for the fiscal year ending March 2025. Casio's projections for the year ending March 2026 toward recovery, with the company betting on a premium product mix to raise average selling prices without abandoning the core identity that built the brand. Collaborations have carried a lot of that strategy recently. Stranger Things, Daft Punk, K-pop group XG, Coca-Cola, the Charles Darwin Foundation, each partnership pulls in a different audience while keeping the existing fan base engaged. The Vintage series, anchored in 1980s nostalgia and including a Pac-Man-themed model, has landed particularly well with buyers who were not alive when the original designs debuted. The quiet luxury moment that peaked in 2023 has not faded. If anything, it has settled into something more durable, a shared understanding that understated signals confidence while loud signals something closer to need. For a brand whose entire identity has always sat on the side of function over flash, that cultural shift is simply the rest of the world arriving at something Casio figured out decades ago. What the documented record actually shows is a group of genuinely powerful people making the same choice, repeatedly, for reasons that have nothing to do with forgetting to buy something better. Bill Gates told a room full of journalists his watch cost about $10 and kept wearing Casios for decades afterward. Chuck Feeney, who funded universities and hospitals and peace processes across multiple continents while giving away $8 billion, put it in one sentence: "Why do I need a Rolex when it tells the same time?" Pope Francis wore an $8 watch that Casio confirmed he simply owned. Barack Obama had an F91W before the world knew his name. Feeney carried a spare in his pocket in case the first one broke. None of them stockpiled Casios as assets. What they stockpiled was something harder to buy, which is the freedom to stop communicating through objects entirely. The watch on a wealthy person's wrist is almost always sending a message. Whether that message is, "Look what I have," or "Look how little I need to prove." The people in this video landed firmly on one side of that. And the fact that it surprises us when we hear it says more about the rest of us than it does about them. A lot of what we spend money on is communication directed at other people. And the most interesting thing about the Casio story is what happens when someone no longer needs to say anything at all. For Chuck Feeney, for Gates, for a pope and a president and a handful of heirs and directors, the answer to every watch question was a piece of plastic that costs $20. Not because they could not afford otherwise, because they were the only ones in the room who had stopped keeping score.